slave's job. That's the lowly slave's job. What did Jesus tell him? He said, unless I wash you, you will have no part with me. Unless we serve others, we will have no part with Jesus Christ. So as Christians, what does this all mean? In his book, Indispensable Qualities of a Leader, John Maxwell said this: when you think of servanthood, do you envision it as an activity performed by the relatively low-skilled people at the bottom of the positional totem pole? Do we? If we do, we have the wrong impression. Servanthood is not about position or skill. It is about attitude. End of quote. I believe that Jesus was sharing this same insight with his disciples. And it applies to us here today as well. Whatever we choose to do to serve others, or as in fact we do, make that choice. We need to keep in mind 9 insights on being a servant. These can be found in 1 Thessalonians 2, 1 through 12. Insight number 1, we need to serve for a higher purpose. Sometimes we do an act of service and then get the feeling that our service didn't count. Nobody even noticed, or that they even cared. That it really didn't matter. That the whole thing was a failure. But that's okay. You see, service for a higher purpose, for God's purpose, is never a failure, no matter what. Never a failure. Insight number 2, serve in spite of your situation. In other words, if you or I wait until conditions are perfect, we will never serve. What is God asking you to do for Him in the way of service? Are you giving Him excuses as to why you can't serve in your situation? I don't have time. I'm in a wheelchair. I'm too old. I'm too young. What's our excuse? You see, if you want to influence others, you must start first by serving others. Insight number 3, serve with integrity. Have you ever thought about the fact that what you believe actually determines how you behave? Our integrity comes from a correct belief system. The integrity of our service, then, is built by a right understanding of God and of His Word. Insight number 4, we need to serve to please God. Every time you and I serve, we must ask ourselves, who am I serving? If our service is done to please men or the world, we are not servants of God. We can't do both. You can't serve man. Insight number 5, serve with pure motives. Whereas the previous insight dealt with pleasing men, this insight deals with pleasing ourselves. Do we love the praise we get from others when we serve? And outwardly refuse thanks and attention while inwardly saying, keep the praises coming, man. Keep the pats on the back coming. We need to serve with pure motives. We need to check our hearts and make sure our motives are pure. Insight number 6, serve with love. There is no greater example of loving service than seen in a mother. Think about it. What does a mother do? Especially with a newborn. She coddles them. She holds them. She feeds them. She nurtures them. She goes all night without sleep for them. She watches over them. She prays for them. She does everything for that child out of love. The servant attitude of love is what you and I must offer in our service as well. Insight number 7, serve sacrificially. By definition, a servant sacrifices for the needs of one he serves. The question is, how much are we willing to give in our service for the needs of others? Is it just a token offering? Or are we really giving something from ourselves and from our heart? Think about the man described in the Bible as the Good Samaritan. What did he do? He sacrificed his time. He sacrificed his possessions. He sacrificed his personal transportation. He sacrificed his life by personally taking care of the man. And he sacrificed his money by taking care of the innkeeper. Do you think that Samaritan had an influence on the other man? You betcha he did. The greater the sacrifice one makes, the greater the influence one can make. Insight number 8, serve blamelessly. Wow, what's that mean? God requires that his servant leaders be above reproach and blameless. When you and I strive to have a life that is pure, our service will take on a blameless quality. Our service will be motivated by the desire to please God selflessly and assist others without looking for recognition or the applause of man. And finally, insight number 9, we need to serve to nurture. Do you realize that even if you say nothing to those you serve, you are still teaching volumes? You see, we nurture others by our Christ-like example of selfless service. Our nurturing service to others at home, at church, on our job, providing help, encouragement, and hope, and smiling at each other, will hopefully point others toward God and godly behavior. You see, no man is the servant he could be. We need to ask God to make us the servant we should be. Servanthood is not an office. It's a ministry. True influence always takes the posture of a servant. Servanthood begins at home. Servanthood begins at home, right here in this home, each one of you, in this church, in this community. I was so proud of our ad council the other night, who voted, instead of these monies that were raised going to these outward ministries throughout the world, they voted to keep it right here in this community this year. In quarter 1, we're going to do this. Quarter 2, we're going to donate to this. Quarter 3 to this. And quarter 4, we're going to do that. Ministry and mission and service starts right here at home. Not to say that the others aren't in need. And if you certainly want to donate to a foreign mission, you can do that. But are we taking care of and are we influencing our local family first? It is a lifestyle. Service is a lifestyle. It has no no selfish motives, and it is a calling that requires no training whatsoever. You see, God isn't concerned about our abilities as much as He is about our availability. Ever think about that? So let's remember, the greater the level of our service to others, the greater the level of our influence. I want to share a quick story with you about serving where you are. You've heard the expression, bloom where you're planted. And you've often wondered, well, how can I serve in my everyday life? I want to give you an example. Not to brag, but to show you how you can incorporate it into the everyday living. All of you know I work for Home Depot. And one day I had a family come in. We dragged in 2 little kids, and she was pregnant herself for another child. Her husband was unemployed at the time. They They just had a house fire that destroyed everything they had. Everything. They had the clothes on their back. They were staying with family currently, but the insurance company wasn't able to get them a temporary trailer for another 30 days. And then they only had 90 days that they could live in that trailer while the house was being rebuilt. So you can understand their anxious moment. They came in literally with this little sleek sheet of paper. You've heard about houses being drawn on a napkin? Well, that's what it reminded me of. A little sheet of paper where they had this and this and this drawn out. This is where they wanted the new kids' room, and this is where they wanted the bathroom and the kitchen and all that. But they wanted it so that none of the kids' bedrooms were in the basement, because that's where the fire started, in the basement. And they barely got their children out of there. And their children were emotionally distraught. They didn't want to move into a house where they had bedrooms in the basement. You can understand that. Anyway, they bring this little sheet of paper into me and they said, "We want to build this, can you estimate it for us?" And I looked at it. I said, "Well, first of all, we don't have any dimensions out here. We don't have any sizing out here. And where are you building it?" They said, "Well, we're going to use the old basement foundation. We had it inspected and they cleared everything out of it, and it's okay to build out again." I says, "Well, before we do anything, why don't I come out and visit you, and we'll measure that foundation so that we've got something to work with." And we did that. We got back in and I was able to draw some blueprints for them. But everything they wanted on one floor wasn't going to fit. Well, it would have, but we would have had about an 8-foot by 8-foot bed for each room. And you couldn't even get a bed in. And so, understanding that they didn't want to go anything in the basement anymore, I said, "Why don't you go up? We'll put the children's bedrooms and a Jack and Jill bathroom on an upper level on one end of the house. Then we can get everything fitted in there." So they liked that idea, and we did that, and I drew up some prints for that. We got them their estimate, got their pricing approved, or their pricing around. They went to the bank and the insurance company with my blueprint and the materials takeoff. And of course, everything has to be approved by the insurance company and by the bank. And it was. They accepted it. They're getting ready to build, they're getting anxious and excited. Their husband was going to have a couple of friends help them, and their father-in-law, who used to be in construction, was going to help them. And her brother, who worked for a framing contractor, was going to help them. So everything was good, right? They bought the pad, paid for it, and the trusses were ordered, the roof trusses and floor trusses, which are non-refundable and non-returnable should something happen. 2 weeks went by. She came in, dragging the kids. The husband wasn't with her this time, crying. Literally in tears and very upset. I could tell something drastically was wrong. Her brother got killed in a car accident the week before. They had just finished the funeral. Her father-in-law had a heart attack, was over at St. Joe's for a quadruple bypass. Wow, their plans were a mess. They didn't know what to do. They wanted to know if they could get a refund. There was nothing I could do. I gave them some names of individual contractors they contacted, but it was way out of their budget. Couldn't afford it. Make a long story short, I went home that night. I didn't sleep. I tossed, turned, thinking about this family. And remember earlier I talked about Jesus said you have 3 things in your hand: your abilities, your skills, your talents, your love for others, and your inadequacies. I knew I couldn't do this by myself, even if I wanted to help. It's just too big of a project. Are you kidding me? We're a month away from snowfall. This was in October, by the way. I knew I couldn't do it myself. I had the skills, the talents, and the desire, and the love. I couldn't do it myself. Neither could they. But as I sat out drinking coffee at 3 o'clock in the morning, I can drink coffee 24/7. Lose a beat of sleep. Jesus talked to me. Says, you got a lot of good buddies out there, don't you? A lot of Christian friends in Emmaus. Right, Dick? See, I had in my hand the resources. I had in my hand acquaintances and friends who were licensed builders and contractors, who had all the tools and the equipment. Us guys love equipment and tools. Tools, yeah. No more ties. We want tools for Christmas. It hit me. The next day I got on the phone, called 4 or 5 of my buddies, and it spread like wildfire. They called some of their buddies and friends. We had decided we were going to frame this house in and get it weather tight for this family. We were going to take a weekend to do this. We figured 5, 6 guys could do it. So we scheduled it for, I think it was the 20-something of October. Okay? We figured we'd have to work Saturday and God help us, Sunday, forgive me, Lord, in order to help this family. 21 contractors showed up that morning. 21. With all their trucks, all their equipment, all their tools. The family was just blown away. We framed the entire house and put the roof trusses up in 10 hours and 15 minutes. It was ready for shingles and windows and doors. What do you have in your hand? How can you serve others? Remember I said God isn't concerned about your abilities as much as He is about your availability. In closing, I want to share a quote from a book entitled Checklist for Life for Men by Douglas Boothius. Listen to this very carefully, because this is the mind of Christ that speaking to us. Tied to the value of a person is the principle of servanthood. We value what we freely serve. Did Jesus value you? Oh, you bet He did. He came down to earth to serve you as the sacrificial lamb for your sins. Tied to the value of a person is the principle of servanthood. We value what we freely serve. Christ was our example. In John 13:15, Jesus said, I have set you an example that you should do as I have